What is happening? And a very warm welcome back to the Physique Formula, episode number 2 of the diet series, following on from last week's episode, which was, just setting up for a diet. How do you do that in the most productive fashion? If you haven't watched that, go watch over it. I believe it's 10 minutes maximum. It's just, going over all you need to know, and within the, realms of 10 weeks before your diet, how to set yourself up so productively for that to make your diet as easy as it possibly can be. So, episode number 2 of the diet series being creating the deficit. Let's crack on with things. So, first of all, there's many different means of creating an energy deficit, and these are just some touched upon here. Now, obviously, decreasing calories is probably the one that comes to people's head first. It's pretty simple, just taking away food, increasing that energy deficit. Now, increasing expenditure, this could be literally anything within the forms of moving your body. Steps, cardio, posing. Now, obviously, there's other things that do burn calories too. For example, just living, like literally your organs obviously take up expenditure, they take up calories, just function on a day-to-day basis. Things like digesting food, that obviously burns calories as well, but within the realms of stuff that you can, you've got the utmost control over. Increasing expenditure, whether that be steps, cardio, posing, as I said, each obviously providing their own benefits within, the realms of each sort of subheading. First up, we do have steps, which is on paper probably the best form of expenditure, mainly because it's so low fatigue and it's so low impact. It's as I've got here as well, it's non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which basically just means calories that are burned, energy that is burned that is not through exercise. And realistically, you could argue that it is exercise, but within this sort of subcategory, it is not. So it's low impact, low fatigue, as I say. It's going to have less of an impact on training than cardio would, which is obviously super important. You want to be upholding training to the best possible standard when you are in a deficit, because realistically, what built the muscle is going to continue to build muscle throughout a deficit up until a point. So if it's a contest prep, for example, then the goal should shift from building muscle to maintaining that muscle, and obviously this is going to help create the environment that is needed for that. The sort of drawback to steps is you can only do so much, because realistically, upwards of 17,500 steps is going to take a fuck ton of time if you're not on your feet with work or something like that. It's going to take a fuck ton of time realistically out of your day, and also, being on your feet for so long can have drawbacks as well, with regards to saying like a contest prep setting, just getting that sort of inflammation running about your quads and stuff like that, being able to flush that off sometimes may be a little bit harder than you would like it to be. Filling up again after running flat for a while can obviously prove difficult for some people, super person dependent, but that's the sort of drawback to steps. There's not really much, but again, obviously everything must have a negative to it if it's got a positive. Now, moving on to cardio, higher heart rate, higher expenditure. Realistically, a lot of benefits from cardio that are outside of just a calorie sort of expenditure standpoint. Obviously, in a push up, I know this obviously isn't regarding pushing up. Maintaining good condition obviously benefits to insulin sensitivity, and also just general health as well, making sure that your resting heart rate is not stupidly high. Doing your cardio, pushing your heart rate higher will obviously aid in making sure that your resting heart rate is not stupid fucking high. Now, low intensity steady state cardio versus high intensity sort of interval cardio. Now, I will always go for low intensity steady state cardio. The reason being is it's lower impact than a high intensity. Like high intensity would just be giving it your all for say 20 seconds and then resting for like 5, and then over and over again, the sort of stuff that you would be familiar with doing in school. Whereas like a low intensity steady state cardio would just be like a 20-35 minute on like a bike, say. And obviously I'm just going to jump straight to different forms of cardio as well. Like, you can obviously do this in many different ways. You could be running, you could be on a treadmill, incline walk, bike, elliptical, skier, literally anything that's going to get your heart rate up high. Now, realistically, when it comes to picking your form of cardio, I think it is person dependent. However, I would stay away from the Stairmaster. In my opinion, I don't think the juice is worth the squeeze with the Stairmaster. Yes, you can get your heart rate up super easily, and obviously the with regards to it in that sort of terms, the perception of effort is a little bit lower. However, obviously going through that, the constant knee flexion and stepping up, and like it's just repetitive. That will have some impact in some shape or form on your leg training, which is not what you want. You don't want to be having these cardio sessions, spilling on over into your training sessions, because at the end of the day, the training is more important than this, because that's going to uphold the muscle that you built throughout a push-up, and it's going to continue to help building it if you are at the early stages of a diet. Now, so that's why I would go for, personally, a incline walk, a bike, realistically, anything that's not going to be super high impact, high fatigue, for the reasons I sort of said before, with regards to just upholding training performance. Now, the age-old debate, fasted state versus fed state cardio. I am on team fasted. You can put forward arguments for fed and say that there's minimal to just minimal benefits for fasted from like a fat loss standpoint, but realistically, if you've not had food in the day, it would just make sense that the fat stores that you have are more readily used as energy in comparison to food that would be in during a fed state. And I like the argument from Mr. Jake Byers as well, of if you know that you've got fed state cardio at the end of your day, that's going to play a toll on you. That's going to be a stressor throughout your day. Knowing that you've got that after a session, especially like if some people, I see some people doing like cardio after a leg session, which again that's a whole different conversation that you just probably shouldn't be doing unless it's absolutely necessary, but most cases it's not. But anyway, having fed state cardio, having cardio towards the end of your day, I do believe that will provide some form of stress from a psychological standpoint, knowing that you've got that later on. So I do think getting up and just getting your cardio out of the way, getting up, what is it, you would literally be like half an hour earlier, so you need to go to bed half an hour earlier as well. Again, it's not the end of the world. I just think getting up, getting moving, it's obviously going to provide that benefit from controlling your blood glucose spike as well in the morning, with your first meal. If you're doing this obviously fasted when you wake up, which is my argument, then I do think fasted it just trumps fed in every way, shape or form. So yeah, that is cardio as the form of creating the deficit for a diet. Jesus, prep brain is well in full effect. Now, following on to a food decrease, primarily carbohydrates. Now, although people obviously you want to uphold fats for just general fat functions, like obviously hormone production and stuff like that, more so of the hormones starting to deteriorate throughout a deficit, most of that probably will be coming from the fact that food is low in general and not actually from fats being low. So you could realistically push fats lower than I think a lot of people say, because a lot of people would just be like, again, taking it kind of face value, be like, obviously fats do help with hormone sort of production, but again, as I say, the sort of bottom line is the hormone deterioration comes from the actual deficit of energy rather than the low intakes of fat. So taking your fat a little bit lower than the sort of recommended 0.3 to 0.5 grams per pound of body weight wouldn't actually be super detrimental. Realistically, the detrimental impacts, as I say, come from the food itself being super low. Obviously, food decrease is super start point dependent in your deficit. You want to be starting on a high sort of level of food. That's kind of what we spoke about in the previous sort of episode, just going over how to set up your diet like to be super efficient out the gates. Obviously food decrease, the ease of use as well. It's easy to do. It's just less food realistically. It's just 25 grams less carb. It's just it's 100 grams less of banana a day. It's super easy to do. However, the food that you're on has to be supportive of your training performance. It's as simple as that. And now this isn't like scaremongering to be like, don't decrease your food. You need to help, need to support your training performance, because realistically your food is going to have to come down at some point. In a deficit, especially obviously as a natural athlete. So not being scared of that is obviously one thing, but obviously making sure that you have to support your training performance. So maybe, again, not to say prioritising, more steps over going for less food, but just kind of weighing up the points that we kind of spoke about here, and making your own decision from there. But personally, I would rather have more food and a little bit more expenditure, but that's just me, person dependent. Obviously, like, literally it'll vary from person to person, and how they operate, how they just work as a person, as a body, realistically. But yeah, that is all for the diet series episode 2. My diet is well and truly kicked off myself into our 10th week of prep at the moment as well, which is obviously great. So that is all for episode number 2 of the diet series, creating the deficit. Next episode number 3 of the diet series, will be managing that deficit, what to do almost when body weight stalls, when the look has stalled, when you're not getting any leaner, and it's not as simple I think as people make out to be. So that is all. I hope this went down an absolute treat with you. I hope you took something from it, and I hope you enjoyed, and I will speak to you in the next one. See ya.